But we're here today to talk about luxury. So we did not have the luxury of technology working for us, but we are here to talk about other luxuries.
It's funny because for me to talk about luxury is funny because all I ever talk about on Untrickled, or I shouldn't say all I ever talk about, but a very frequent topic for me is here's how to live on 2 grains of rice and a bean for 3 years. You just have to be
Ah,
thrifty, you know. And now I'm gonna talk about luxury. So luxury means different things to different people and in different
does.
times. Me-
Absolutely. So it means, like you said, it means different things to different people. It means different things at different times. It's got all kinds of different meanings. So what do you want to start? You want to tell me something that you consider a luxury or something that you like as a
I
luxury?
just spent money, and I don't like to do that. I don't enjoy spending money. I don't enjoy shopping.
Uh-huh.
A few months ago, I wrote about boots, and boots were kind of a meta thing to talk about because I've quoted several times the Samuel Vimes theory of boots about a rich man spends a little bit of money and has great boots that keep his feet warm for 10 years, but a
Right.
man keeps buying cheap boots
Yeah.
and in the end pays more and his feet are less comfortable.
Yeah.
Behold, trying to flash anybody. Behold,
Oh,
these boots.
those are nice.
They are the single most expensive item I think I've ever bought, including my wedding dress, including my daughter's wedding dress.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've ever spent this much on one single wearable item,
Yeah.
and you wonder, why would I do that? Because I just turned 60, which I'm obsessed with, and my idea is
Last week, right? Happy, happy, happy,
I
happy.
should only have to buy boots one more time if I live to like 80 years old or
Those are
whatever.
some good boots then, 'cause those are
They
gonna last a long time.
They should, and I debated because I'm not, like, working on a factory floor to where I need to have really expensive boots, but I didn't wanna have to keep replacing them. I wanted to make this a lifetime purchase, and
Mhm.
so I wrote about boots, and I did a poll on Substack, and 81% of readers said I should get the really good Doc Marten boots.
Uh-huh.
Of course, they weren't paying for them, but, what really decided me was when my daughter told me that she knew someone who had her mother's boots from the '80s, and I thought, "Okay."
Mhm. I have to say, I bought it must have been in the late '80s, I had a pair of Doc Martens, and they had lasted a very long time. I probably still have them somewhere.
Oh, that's good to know. You should
Yeah.
dig them out, and, we
Yeah.
can compare them.
Yeah. No, they're just like the black, black kinda standard, but I mean, they served me well as a look in high school, and I'm sure they would serve me well as a look now. So that's a luxury, right? In the sense that it's something that you wouldn't normally pay as much as you did for it.
No, but then, like, when you start to parse the word luxury a little bit,
Right.
is it luxury if you buy something really high quality that's gonna last a long time? And, again, every one of those words has different meanings, like,
Mhm.
what do you mean by last a long time? What do you mean by
Right.
quality? Like, I'm not the kind of person who would probably ever consider buying a really expensive handbag, even
Mhm.
though they say they'd last forever. I bought one for like $40. That's pure leather, built like a saddlebag, looks like a saddlebag. It's not fashion.
Uh-huh.
It'll last forever too. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't need to spend. I don't know how much those bags cost thousands of dollars. I think some of them do.
I mean, Birkins, Birkin's like the one that people talk about all the time, and they can start at 20,000 and they can go up to 400,000. So, they cost the same as people's houses.
Yeah, to me personally, and sorry if, people are allowed to disagree with me
I
on
don't
this.
have one.
To me, that's really disgusting. That's disgusting to spend a house on a
Yeah.
bag. I don't care if it lasts forever. You can get decent quality bags that last for 10, 20 years, probably more. I mean, actually, my unfashionable little leather purse, because of the way it's built, it's hard for me to believe that it's even destructible. I think I could take it, hunting or camping for
Yeah.
6 months, and it probably would still be in good shape. I bought it with the idea of keeping it long.
Forever. Yeah. It's interesting. So this is what I wrote about this week in the Post, right? That when people want to make luxury sound rational, right? They want to make it sound, like it's not really offensive, like a $400,000 purse. They talk about the investment and the quality and the workmanship and the retained value, and it's a good investment. And I mean, there have been all kinds of articles in from The Economist to the Wall Street Journal to Vogue about how Birkins retain their value and they just go up in value. And what you bought for $20,000 you can sell to later, 5 years later for $200,000 because there's a resale market that's absolutely crazy for some of these purses. Um, and then if people want to make it sound like it's not, they kind of make that the reason for it being, luxuries being good, and then if it's something different, it's usually kind of coded feminine, it's more irresponsible, and it's loud, and it's flashy, and it's just frivolous, right? So you could look at a Birkin either way. You could say, "Well, of course, it's an investment," or someone could say, "It's just actually gross and it's frivolous." And I think they have different meaning, right? It's different ways of looking at the same thing.
They do. For
Yeah.
me, my general luxury ideas, this is another thing I've written about. People who read me might have seen me say this. Um, I think that it's pretty luxurious to do things like take a hot bubble bath
Mhm.
and time out. So there are what I you may or may not consider these things luxuries, but taking a walk, walking your dogs,
Yeah.
spending time with a friend. I mean, to me, these are kind of a little bit like luxuries. They're a type of
Yeah.
luxury, but they're very different from Doc Martens boots, which are also very
Right.
different from a Birkin bag.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because I mean, you had a post about that got a lot of traction. I remember people, saying you were saying a luxury is a bubble bath or dinner with friends or these nice things. And one thing I wanted to ask you about that is, uh, are they actually luxuries, or are those just things that we don't even have anymore because of the political economy that we're in, and people are overworked and people don't have right the time to spend with their friends, or they don't have the right childcare, therefore they can't have a bubble bath once a week or things like that. Are they actually luxuries, or are they things that we should all are they just actually forms of leisure that we should all have, but we don't because of like current conditions?
Well, again, if you think back in history, 'cause I wrote that other piece in which I said, "Do poor people today live like kings used to?"
Yeah.
Because a king didn't have, uh, fresh fruit in winter or central heating or air conditioning or modern medical or whatever. A queen could die if she needed a cesarean, the same as, no matter
Yeah,
how
I
good
mean,
she
it's so many women died in childbirth.
so there's a lot of different ways you could consider luxury, I guess you but I guess for me, luxury is something beyond what you really have got to have, and I
Mhm.
think it tends to also mean something not everybody can have,
Yeah,
because it used to be air conditioning was a luxury.
right,
Now we quite rightly say, if you're an elderly person in poor health and you live in an area that's very hot, like, say, south of Florida, how can you call air conditioning a luxury? You might well die without it.
right. Of course, like you say, historically, ice was a luxury, right? It was a very big
Yeah.
deal to have ice, and, I mean, ice cream was an absolute luxury at sort of Victorian dinner parties because ice cream and having to keep it cold meant it was an absolute luxury, so,
Well, sweet
again,
tea.
like, historically contingent, right?
Chilled sweet tea in Southern times, I'm sure you
Yeah.
know, the reason why that's such a thing today is that was really a show off thing. You had the tea, you had the ice,
Mhm.
it wasn't something you could just have, most people could just have back then, and now anybody can have it for a dollar or something, but, so the definitions change, and partly that's because as technology marches on,
Yeah.
something that was really hard to get becomes really easy to get, and then people don't want it anymore. The people
Right, so
who
I think maybe that's part of part of what define that's something that people bring up a lot too as a part of the definition of luxury is something that is exclusive, right? Something that not everyone can have. So, the ice when ice is rare, ice cream when ice cream is rare, a Birkin when there's only 5 of that particular type or whatever it is, but that it's something that's not everyone can have. And it's interesting because there's been a lot written about the democratization of luxury, and so everybody can have like luxury goods to some degree. Like, you know, there's a version of the Birkin that they sell at Walmart. It's called the Workin, right? you
so
know,
it's really
it's still $80, so it's not as if it's cheap. But the idea that everybody can have a Birkin or everybody can have, some of these luxuries and I think at one point Karl Lagerfeld did some type of collab with some like more downscale brand, and you have a lot of those type of collaborations. So it seems like it's a fine balance between keeping your exclusivity but also cashing in on, a larger market.
It's also used a little bit to enforce class lines.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard somebody say, "Ugh, I was in the grocery store and this woman was using food stamps, but her
Mhm.
bills were done and she had an iPhone and she carried a nice purse."
Yeah.
Not a probably not a Birkin, but maybe she
Mhm.
was working. um,
Yeah, right.
nice clothes.
Yeah,
Like, number 1, fingernails. My fingernails are not done. I don't value fingernails, but for people who do, you can do them cheaply. My daughter has completely perfect fingernails at all time because she learned how to do them. She set up her own little nail in her
yeah,
basement. She does that for her relaxation, so she
uh-huh,
looks as if she spent a mint on her nails, but she hasn't. She did it herself.
yeah,
As for clothing, anybody can go into a thrift shop and buy some pretty nice, designer clothes if
mhm,
they wanna spend some time doing that. The clothes you wear until you get to the really upper echelons of fashion, you can be fairly poor and dress pretty nice if that's what you wanna
yeah.
do.
I
And
think you're right, though. I mean, it is definitely it's a way of policing class boundaries, and even if you didn't do your own nails, even if you did go get a manicure at a salon, there's something very class-based and very moralizing and also very, you know, there's a politics around saying that only certain people should have access to certain goods, and it's very resonant of of sumptuary laws, right? We used to have sumptuary laws,
yeah,
and
true.
only elite people could wear certain things, and like you said, it was a way of policing class boundaries, and there's a lot of judgment if, if somebody, like you said, somebody in the, grocery store using food stamps to buy something that they don't think they should, or, somebody who shouldn't have this iPhone or somebody shouldn't be spending money on, whatever it is. There's a lot of class policing around that, and, it was one of the reasons that the welfare queen trope was so
Oh,
successful, right? Like,
yeah,
that this whole idea that people were spending money, like Linda Taylor was the original welfare queen, but that there were
she was
people
right.
out there perpetrating all of this fraud, which was obviously not true. There's always been some fraud, there always will be some
You
fraud,
can
but the
do
idea that people were using food stamps and, having lobster thermidor and, baked Alaska every night or whatever it was that was the height of the fashion for food at that time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Definitely like a lot of class policing and race policing involved in the same thing, right?
yeah, like, you poor people, you need to look poor. You don't
Uh-huh.
look poor enough. Take off
Right.
that, nice Ralph Lauren sweater that you found at Goodwill for 10 bucks.
Mhm.
That isn't for you. You should be
Yeah.
wearing a Walmart sweater.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's a great deal of you don't deserve things, right? Again, it's the
Mhm.
deserving poor and the undeserving poor, and also just the fact that poverty should be visible and that you should be, grateful to have what you have. And I think that's something that's policed through people having luxury goods or not having them.
We talk about the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. I've never heard anybody say the deserving rich and the
Right.
non-deserving.
No, no one ever says that, do they?
We never say, like, she doesn't deserve to be rich because she just
Right.
inherited her money. This other girl, she deserves to be rich because she started her own business, so
Right.
she's the deserving rich. She's allowed to drive a nice car.
Yeah. It's actually interesting, right? Because we do the opposite. We tend to fetishize old money as opposed to new money. And so we actually uh even probably, give some type of deference to the didn't work for it version.
Which is odd because it's obviously we like to talk a lot about, again, the deserving poor and people working hard and, let me just say, the bootstraps and all this.
Right.
Um, we don't require that of everybody. We all know somebody probably who inherited money and either doesn't have to work or even if they still work, they would be able to be okay if they didn't. And we never criticize those people for having inherited money, but we criticize other people for having not inherited money and not having inherited certain advantages that would allow them to live better lives. So
Yeah.
that's
It's interesting. There was an article maybe a couple of years ago. It was Tressie McMillan Cotton, and it was about
oh,
penalizing people who had less money, people who were living, low income people for wearing nice clothes or buying nice things. And the whole idea was, you have to. This woman bought this because she went on a job interview.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, do you remember that article? And so she said, "Look, you're criticizing this woman for buying like a nice silk shell because she went and she spent all of
Yeah,
this money to buy this nice silk shell, which you're thinking of her going out and being extravagant. She bought it because she went to a job interview. And you know what? They're going to look at her and say, judge her according to what she's wearing. And she, wants to signal, right, the right kind of like class belonging."
if I remember that piece correctly, and I read it years ago, but it really
Yeah.
stuck with me too. I think the woman wore like a white T-shirt underneath a suit jacket, trying to because she didn't have money for a silk
Yeah.
shell, and I
Yeah.
think that the interviewer criticized her for not wearing the proper silk shell when I believe this was, like, at a salon, like a upscale salon, if again, if
Mhm.
I'm remembering this, and she was saying how the lack of having that proper silk shell of
Yeah.
wearing a t-shirt type of, thing instead underneath it probably cost her the job because she was judged for it. But she
Mhm.
been judged if she'd borrowed money to buy
Right.
a silk shell too, so, I
Right.
mean, I think the message here is that if you're poor, stay in your
It's
corner
it's hard to
and
win, right? Stay in your lane and don't look try not to look too nice and try not to, like, have too new of an iPhone, right?
don't look too poor because
Right.
then you aren't even trying. So,
Yeah.
don't look too poor, but don't try to look rich, but also
Yeah.
remember who you are, but also why aren't you trying harder?
Yeah, it's an interesting way of allotting, consumer goods to certain people, not other people, and basically saying people get to have the goods that are appropriate to their class. And it's definitely a way of not, policing class, not just obviously for for low income people, but this is what you get if you're, this type of middle class, and this is the type of goods you get. It reminds me of I don't know if you probably remember them from like the 80s, like the Preppy Handbook.
I remember seeing that way
And
back
they had,
then.
they had these little diagrams, and it's like, here's what you wore, and here's what you wore, like, in the summer, and here's what you wore in the winter, and the entire it was, these curated looks that told you what luxury was or what, like, what people wore, and, it was like you had to have the tote bag from LL Bean that was monogrammed, and you had to have, like, a field hockey, it was like they were ridiculous, but they gave you the list of consumer goods that you needed to be in a certain class, right? And it was like your mom has your mom has a Wagoneer. Now it would be a Range Rover or whatever. But like there were certain goods that came along with every level and every season, and that's just it was a really like obvious, funny, but like true way of showing how people signal right their class belonging.
I'm certain there are fashion blogs that do the same thing now,
Oh yeah.
and
Hmm.
even though I am clearly not a fashion forward person, yes,
You are with those boots. Come on now.
I did Google how to style Doc Martens with a dress because
Hmm.
I'm a dress wearer, and, my intention is to wear these with not fancy dresses, but,
Yeah.
like my everyday sundresses that I wear in summer, and I wanted to make sure, like, I'm gonna be able to really wear these, right? Because I intend to
Hmm.
truly get my money out of these, and
Yeah.
I wanna make sure I don't just wear them when I'm doing heavy work or in winter. I wanna wear them in all but the hottest weather, in the hottest weather
Hmm.
sandals, and so, like, I checked because even though I say I don't care about fashion, I also didn't wanna look stupid.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's fair, right? Like, I wanna look, but I also wanna make sure I don't look totally ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah, and, I there's really no point in buying really nice boots and then not wearing them because you're afraid you're wearing them wrong or something, and
yeah,
in the ideal world, I wouldn't care about wearing them wrong. I probably do care less than most, but I still care a little bit.
yeah, of course. Um, One of the things that's interesting about luxury things, is that it's also changed from we think a lot about consumer goods, right? About the purses, the bags, the boots, whatever it is, but there's also been a lot of talk about luxury shifting to experience.
Yes.
And the idea that, now it's not just consumer goods and that some people, right, are getting away, from spending all their money on, right, the, like, extreme luxury brands and spending their money instead on experiences, and so that's an interesting shift too, in terms of choosing to spend your money that way, but also it's a different type of thing, it's a different type of signal, I guess, I don't know, what do you think about, that?
Well, you can buy time.
Mhm.
You pay someone else to clean your home, take care of your car, do your lawn care, whatever.
Yeah.
If you can go out to eat or have food delivered every night, oh, that's quite a few hours of time that you can then use to either work more or to spend with your family or to do whatever you
Mhm.
like because you have that extra time.
Yeah.
And, by the same token, if you wanna have an experience, it could be everything as from as cheap as a hot bubble bath
Mhm.
to, going to Europe. It could be anything in between. And so, yeah, I think experiences can actually be better than stuff because the fact is all of us have too much stuff. I mean, unless
Mhm.
you live in a tiny house or something like that, almost everybody, except the extreme minimalists who have really worked hard to be that way,
Yeah.
has too much stuff. It's like you've got clothes in your closet you don't wear, you've got knickknacks that you don't even know where you got them. You've got a bunch of candles people gave you at office gift exchanges. I'm like, you don't want all this stuff, but you've got it.
Yeah.
And I hate to just throw it away. It's something that somebody you
Mhm.
or somebody spent money on, but you've got all the stuff. You don't really need more stuff. What do you do when you already bought all the stuff?
Mhm.
Start looking for things to do. And if you're on the bottom level, maybe you are happy just to go out for, like, a really inexpensive dinner, which is
Right.
kinda where I am. But if you've got lots of money, I just read in the New York Times, there's a place in New York that charges $51, I think it was, for half a roast chicken.
Yeah.
And I just, like, thought that of course, I don't pay New York prices, I pay
Right.
the cost of living prices in Central Illinois, but
Yeah.
if I want roast chicken, I will either pay $5 at Costco for a really good rotisserie chicken,
Yeah.
or I'll roast it myself. It's actually cheaper to buy the Costco
Yeah.
chicken than to roast it yourself. But if I were living in New York and making more money and living at a much higher level, I can see how, like, "Let's go out to this new place where it's $51 for the chicken."
Right. Yeah.
Chicken
Yeah.
used to be the cheap thing on the menu, but
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't think of myself as again, I don't, like, buy a lot of, like, high luxury goods. I'm not like a I think of luxury for me as being able to buy whatever I want when I want it, whatever it is, but it's usually not like a $20,000 purse. Um, but I do I like a restaurant, right? I like a luxury hotel, I like a restaurant, I like a three-star Michelin restaurant, and I will go to them, like, I will go out of my way and I make reservations, like, way ahead of time. And obviously, that's one of the things that's been completely satirized in movies, right? People and their seeking out of food experiences, and, it gets to the point of ridiculous. But it is something. It's a way of right. It's a way of there's different forms of exclusivity there too, and where you've been and that type of thing, and it's another signal.
one thing that really struck me one time, was someone that I worked with mentioned that she was being taken out to lunch by somebody that I actually, like, helped her get that job, someone that I had known for a long time,
Yeah,
who was at a much higher level than the person who got the job. And she said that my friend was taking everybody that, worked for her out for lunch to a place that is unique and quirky, but not high end, just a
yeah,
nice local fun place.
yeah.
And it turns out this woman had never had I said something like, "Their hummus is really good. They have, like, really exceptional hummus."
Uh
And
huh.
this woman had never had hummus, which is not exactly, um I mean, that's a to me, that was something that, like, well, everybody knows what hummus is. She did not know what hummus was, she'd never had it. And I know to some people are like, "What?" That's some people's idea of luxury food, but for some people it is, you know? I mean, there's some
And
people that are eating food is really a big class, signifier
yeah,
as well, and so if your idea of, like, a fancy dinner, that could when I say fancy dinner, 10 different people get 10 different things in their mind.
right. Yeah,
To her, this was like a really exotic meal, and to
yeah,
me, that was just, we'll splurge on a nice dinner, but not a crazy nice
right.
dinner.
And that's also obviously, like, very culturally based too, right? Like,
Yeah,
having different understandings of, like, different cuisines and understanding, like, you know, again, like, what different food from different sort of, like, cultural backgrounds looks like. So,
but there's a lot of times, and I do love to cook, and I cook a lot, I'm a
me too.
cook. But, I've gotten to the point where I see a recipe and it looks good, but it calls for one exotic ingredient, and I realize I would have to either get it online or drive 20 minutes or more,
Uh-huh.
if I could even do it then, to get this one exotic,
Yeah.
ingredient, and sometimes it's like, I don't think this recipe was meant for me. Maybe I will
Yes.
find a good recipe that calls for the ordinary foods that are available from my area that I don't have to, like, and now you got this weird spice that you're never gonna use again, like,
Yeah.
that's probably, yeah, for me personally, that's probably not the way I'm gonna cook anymore just because
Yeah.
there's plenty of other ways to cook great
Yeah.
food, but
Yeah.
those are, that's kind of a class thing too, it's kind of a luxury thing,
Mhm.
like, can you afford to make this fancy food
Right.
that takes weird equipment and takes weird spices, and if nobody's ever heard of it before, and you're like, "Oh, it's a Middle Eastern delicacy or something," and
Right.
you're not Middle
Yeah.
Eastern, you won't have ever heard of it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely applies to a lot of different hobbies, right? Or like,
Mhm.
things that people do as leisure and like the amount of money that they take, right? And they are luxury in the sense that, right? Like, I mean, like people always talk about something like skiing or boating or those types of things, right? They're
Yeah,
like maybe luxury pastimes because they take a lot of equipment, they take expensive equipment. You can't, most of the time you can't just go skiing anywhere,
yeah.
right? I mean, I grew up in Colorado, so you can actually go skiing like all the time. But lift tickets now cost an incredible amount. People talk about if you go with your, if you have children and you go for a weekend with your kids, like lift tickets are crazy.
I've heard
Obviously, boating's an expensive thing. So all those pastimes that also take up a lot of golf, right? Like things that take up money because they take up the
you're exactly
resources in joining someplace where you can do it, right? Like a golf club or a tennis club and then
well,
the equipment and the time.
if you have enough money to join a country club to play things like tennis and golf, you know who you're not gonna run into there? You're not gonna run into poor people like me. You're
Well,
gonna
I mean,
be
you will run into the people who work there, and
you will run
that's
into those
right.
people, but
But you're
it's
not gonna consider that, right? You're not gonna take that into your worldview problem.
no, it's, it's funny because the thing about country clubs, my sister who she like I said, she passed away a few years ago, and she did work. She managed the dining room at a country club, and they
Oh,
loved her there, and when she died, when the people came through for the visitation,
mhm,
I knew just look, obviously because she died so young, it was a huge turnout because
yeah,
that's what happens when you pass away young. But I looked through the line and because I had moved away from where I grew up, I didn't recognize a huge number of people because I hadn't been back, you know,
yeah,
for a lot much, but I could look through and pick out automatically who are the country club
the
people. And I was right 100% of the time.
time,
Like, and they'd come to me like, "I just loved your sister. She was such a treasure. She made it so great to go to the country club. She did such,
yeah,
she made such beautiful decorations. She blah, 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 blah." And, like,
mhm,
I mean, it was wonderful that they came. They truly did love her, and it was
yeah,
amazing. But I definitely didn't mix them up with the people from my dad's church or
yeah,
people that she went to high school with or, anything like that. And I've always wondered, like, sometimes you can just tell somebody's social class and to some extent their education and things like that just by how they look. And I usually can't say how I know, but you do know, and I'm not an
mhm,
expert on this at all, but you can just kinda tell.
yeah,
And it's a little bit like their nicer clothes, it's a little bit how they groom themselves or
sure,
how they present themselves.
mhm,
I always wonder what people think when they see me because I don't think I conform
yeah,
very well, but they probably pick me out the minute I walk into a room.
yeah. Well, it's interesting now, right? A lot of right, the coding has changed. There's that meme about you can always tell who the million or the billionaire in the meeting is because he's got like the hoodie and no shoes on, right, and like shorts, and like again having so much money that you don't have to conform to any of the codes. But it's interesting. It's something I think about a lot. I teach in a law school, and the students, are thinking about obviously from the minute they start thinking about getting jobs. And we have a lot of students who are first gen law students, and thinking about getting a suit and buying a suit and how to look and how to dress and how to be on interviews is something that they really need to like have people talk to them about. And of course they do. Like no one goes up, no one knows these things innately, right? So it's like learning how to basically like telegraph to people what what like a people are interviewing in a law firm are going to expect as a professional attire. And
Well,
that's a very culturally constructed standard. So, of course everyone has to be taught that sometime. And some people get taught at different times than others, right?
so as you know, I've got that series, Poverty and Privilege, which is
Yeah.
about 2 Ivy League educated
Yeah.
attorneys, neither of which now works as an attorney.
Yeah.
Um, Richard, the man with generational wealth who
Yeah.
also worked in a law firm, who also had a Ivy League law degree, and, Lauren, who has the Ivy League law degree, but you'd have to read the whole series, but, which is
I've
free.
read it, I love it because, but I feel very close to it having that same background of
It
some of them.
it's free on Untrickled if anybody
Yeah.
is interested, but, uh, she wants her kids to have a better life than what she has, and so
Mhm.
the right way she met with this guy online was she posted in a Facebook group saying, "Could anybody offer some guidance on what I should buy for my child who won a scholarship, a complete scholarship to,
Yeah.
a really expensive prep school that they would never be able to afford?" And, this guy reached out and was like, "Well, I've got some things." And you think, in my world, if an older man offers, clothing to a kid, you'd think, "Why would the kid want your cast-offs?" But I realize
Right.
it's a different world. In
Yeah.
his world, a really nice, somewhat worn Brooks Brothers jacket or, that's as
Yeah.
close as I can come to
Yeah.
explaining it. Um,
It still works. It still works, at least in law schools.
in my world, you buy a brand new suit, but in his world, that's not necessarily what you would always do.
Mm.
I mean, you buy new suits too, but, like, my idea of a suit, like, my son graduated from high school. We
Yeah.
went to Partners, and I bought him the only suit that fit him because he's a beanpole with a weird size,
Mm.
and he still, in his 30s, has that same suit, and that's what he wears when when someone dies.
Yeah.
But if he tried to, apply for a law school type of job, pretending he had that degree, they wouldn't hire him on the basis of his suit. He would need someone to say, "This is the right kind of suit to buy."
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's such a fine line, and I know, like the career offices kind of like walk this line all the time between enforcing codes, right, and being actually like the people who reproduce them, which you don't want to do, but also like letting people know what's expected of them,
Mhm.
and just to let here's what they're expecting you to look like, and sort of helping people telegraph things that they want to telegraph in an interview without also like unintentionally reproducing the norms that you don't think are valuable. So it's kind of like it's a hard line because you want them to get jobs. You also want to be like it shouldn't keep matter what you wear, right, in your
Wouldn't
interview.
But every time I've gone to a job interview, I've worn a suit, even though
Mhm.
I wasn't going for a law school or anything,
Yeah,
and I don't think that, like I don't think I necessarily had to wear a certain
yeah,
level of suit, but I needed to look like I was treating the occasion with the gravity it desired, not just
yeah.
show up in T-shirt and flip-flops saying, "Yeah, I want this job."
Right. Right. Yeah, I'll be honest, I have one suit which I wore when I was interviewing for teaching jobs, and I think of one of the luxuries of my job is I can wear whatever I want, and I don't have to wear suits, which I don't like personally because I don't like that sort of corporate-y look, but that's also a type of luxury is to be able to wear what you want, in your workplace, and that's not always the case.
Well, since I work from home for myself, I don't have a dress code at all. I do dress
Yeah.
up a little bit for a live, but if you knew how often I'm sitting at my computer, wearing a bathrobe type of thing, it
Yeah.
I
I
could
mean, that's also a luxury too. I spend a lot of time, I'm not in the classroom all the time, so I spend a lot of time working at home, and I work in my pajamas in my bed with my cats, and that's a luxury, right? That's
Yes.
a
Oh, yes. Um, you can't
somebody in the chat said, "Luxury is an abundance of that which we value," and that kind of speaks to that, right? It's having a great deal of what you value.
My dogs are luxuries. You can't see them, but they're both in the
Yeah.
room. They're both snoozing. You can assume if I'm in this room, the dogs are in this room snoozing.
Yeah, right. The cats are
Yeah.
running around somewhere. But
They're
that's like that's a nice way of thinking about it, right? An abundance of what we value and being able to have more of what you value. Makes me kind of wonder. I was thinking like if I was trying to figure out how or if it's possible to create a politics around luxury. So on the one hand, it's like if we think of luxury as leisure and just things that we
Mhm.
like we want more of it and we want everybody to have luxury. On the other hand, if we think of luxury as, you know, billion-dollar yachts and private jets that are ruining the environment, like we don't want more luxury. So
No,
it's kind of like depends what meaning you're looking at because like luxury as comfort and leisure for people like we want, and then luxury as excessive consumption is just a whole different thing.
so everybody should have some kind of luxury of some sort, and that again, luxury is a huge term, but, um, again, I'm somebody who I voluntarily live without things like a dishwasher to save money.
Mhm.
I didn't have a dryer for many, many, many years because the
Yeah.
wiring in this old house wasn't up to date. We have one now, but I'm so used to hanging everything up that I've continued doing that, almost all the time. But even though we were doing without a lot of things that other people consider to be just standard, we did buy a luxury a few years ago, and that was a really, really nice espresso maker. And
Mm.
I felt a little bit weird buying it because, like, I didn't have a dryer, I didn't have a dishwasher, I didn't have
You're like, "But I have a Lavazza espresso maker in my
I
kitchen."
have a really nice, espresso maker, and
Yeah.
the reason why we thought about it for a long time, that one of the first pieces I ever wrote that made over $1,000 was something on Medium comparing, European and American coffee customs.
Mm.
For some reason, that one really,
Okay.
that was the first one. I'm like, "We could take this $1,000 and buy an espresso maker."
That
Like
seems highly appropriate given the source.
and my husband said, "Are you sure you wouldn't like a million other things that are needed around here?"
Yeah.
The other thing is, again, my husband's Dutch, he loves coffee. Coffee is
Yeah.
into him, and he's used to having really good coffee in Europe, and over in, the US, coffee is not so good unless you are able to afford a really nice coffee place. It is the height of luxury to us to have
Mhm.
espresso after dinner.
Yeah.
It doesn't even once you've bought the machine, that is, it's not especially expensive.
Right.
I mean, we buy the beans at Costco, they're not crazy
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, it's just that initial investment of the machine, that's the
Yeah,
luxury, yeah.
but
And I
again
mean, again, it's a luxury product in terms of the machine, but it's the luxury of, like, the time and the experience, right?
yeah, and we never go to coffee shops. We just
Mm.
don't do that. They talk about poor people are poor because 'cause they're spending all their money on lattes. Well, we don't
We'll talk about that another day. That's a
hey, we don't
yeah.
spend any of our money on lattes, but we do have good espresso or,
Mm,
sometimes he makes me a latte because we can do that with this machine. And so, like, that is, probably not on brand for me. Like, this woman talks about living a simple life, but she bought Doc Martens boots and she has an espresso maker. I'm like, yeah, that's true because of all the things I could possibly spend money on, those were 2 things that I thought about for several months each before I spent the money on them,
mhm,
and, they really add value to my life. They add as much value to my life as other people get from whatever their little luxuries are.
mhm.
But these are like,
Yeah.
interesting and there were many years when I couldn't do either one of those things. I
Right. So maybe it's that not maybe it's little luxuries versus big luxuries, but again, that's so relative, right? It's all, I mean, that's one of the problems with the luxury, the term of luxury. I mean, there's a standard term when you say the luxury brand market, right? People like that's its own term, and you have like all the luxury brands. But when you just kind of talk about it generally, you're
Mhm.
right. It's like it's so subjective as to what luxury means to people.
It's like saying like the word rich or the word poor. These are very
Hmm.
subjective terms, and, a lot of things that other people think are just normal life seem like
Yeah.
luxuries to me because I've never made much money. But, I used to have this friend who was really, really rich, generational wealth rich, and, I used to love to shock her because all the things that she thought were just, "Well, everybody lives this way." I'd be like, "Nope, everybody doesn't live that way," and she would
Yeah.
not be able to believe it. It was so fun to just shock the crap out of her constantly.
Ha!
Like,
What was the biggest surprise to her?
"Oh
Like,
god."
you
I mentioned that we only took 1 real vacation in my entire childhood, and
uh-huh.
she said, "Well, you mean other than Florida for spring break?" I said, "No, no, 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 no.
Ah.
We never went to Florida." Um, we
Mm.
left our state, I think, 1 time.
Yeah,
Well, we crossed the border from Illinois to Missouri a couple of times to go to Six Flags, but as far as, like, actually driving somewhere and going on a vacation,
yeah,
there's really only one thing that I would say counts as that. And no, we didn't ever fly to Florida. We didn't ever go to Florida. I didn't go to Florida
yeah,
until I was an adult, and that blew her mind. She thought literally everybody could afford to go to Florida every year for
yeah,
spring break. She honestly thought that.
right. So not a luxury then, right? Like, not a luxury at
Me, that's
all.
a luxury. I've since gotten to do that. I took my kids
Right.
and grandkids, uh, to Florida
But,
for
like, for her, right? Like, not a luxury at all, and, like, she didn't understand it as a luxury.
she actually has a second house in Florida just because
Right.
she have a second house in
Which
Florida.
is not again.
Normal to her to own several houses that, several vacation houses in
Yeah,
places around the country. I think she grew up with, like they had 3 or 4 houses here and there, and I think they had
yeah,
Colorado and 1 in Florida, and I don't even know.
yeah.
But that is not how I grew up. We lived in a trailer. We
Right.
didn't have any houses for until I was
You didn't
older.
have a second you didn't have a second trailer in Florida?
We did not. We were but, yeah, but, like, to the people that I grew up with, the idea of spending that much money on a coffee maker is completely ridiculous. It's as
Mhm.
ridiculous as I think it is to spend $20,000 on a Birkin, so it is all
Right.
completely relative,
Yeah.
and
I mean, some of it's like, I guess maybe also it's the definition. I mean, it's extra, right? It's like what's left over when you have like you have your normal budget and then whatever it's like extra and different, right? It's like something different than what you would normally spend on.
You
I
know,
think
that's
about it because like a lot of times I just think of like the way that like the law does it. Like when they talk about like spousal support or how much somebody should get or how much kids like child support. I mean, child support's all income shares. But people like the court will always just think of like, well, here's the lifestyle you're accustomed to, right? Like whatever it is, whatever like income level, it's like you've been accustomed to a certain lifestyle and there's things that are appropriate for you because this is a lifestyle you're accustomed to. And then there are things that are extra, right? And so like if
mhm,
you are accustomed to the two houses, then that's okay. And like what's extra is the luxury. If you're accustomed to whatever you're accustomed to, right? That's like the baseline. And then luxury is whatever is extra.
yeah. I have a feeling that if you ask 100 different people what's just basic life and luxury, that you
Yeah.
get your different answers.
Do you
And,
think here's a question because like we have like, I think there again I think everybody does have a different idea. Do you think that there's like a baseline any more middle class of like what's baseline versus a luxury?
I think for one thing, we used to all have the same news and the same movies.
Yeah.
There weren't movies were something you went to, like, on Friday or Saturday night, and there were
Yeah.
only movies, and everybody saw the same ones or, had the same ones available, and everybody had the same we had a what am I trying to say? Our culture had, like, a certain baseline that
Yeah, there's baselines, yeah.
and so everybody kind of had the same idea of what is a normal lifestyle because we
Yeah.
but you look at it now, everybody is so splintered in individuals. We all listen to different music. If you tell me what
Right.
bands you listen to, they're probably different bands. I've probably never heard of your bands.
Right.
You may have never watched the same shows and movies I watched. You may have never, the brands, like
Yeah.
and so many things, like, things that people think are just normal average American, like, "No, no, no, that's your bubble." We're all in different bubbles,
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
we're all in very different bubbles. And so, if I had to describe how I grew up, it would be basically the original Roseanne. And I'm sorry
Mhm.
it went crazy later on because that show, actually, that was an accurate portrayal of the culture in which I grew up.
Yes.
When you look at, I don't watch enough TV to be able to come up with the ones that are more popular, but if you look at, say, I'm gonna say Friends, I know that's not a new show, but it's one
It's had a little like recurrence of popularity last year, I think.
but in the way they lived a whole lot better, even though they were supposed to be poor young people, poor-ish,
Right. And
almost
there's so many great articles. I mean, it's so obvious, right? Like those types of shows, like how do they live? How do they possibly live? Right.
and just to take a quick little side trip here, I spent 30 years in newspapers, and when I see how, newspaper reporters are portrayed in the movies, it is freaking hilarious
Yes.
because, they number 1, they have enough free time to have these great romances and to, like, solve crimes or whatever,
Yeah.
and they have great shoes and clothes, and they have wonderful apartments, like, no, they live in a shithole, and they wear old clothes, and they don't have
Right.
any their leisure is like having a beer at
Yeah.
a dive bar, unless you're talking about the people at the very upper levels, like, that's oh gosh, Sex and the City, which I don't I've only seen a few issues of that because I never had
Yeah.
kids, but I've seen enough to know enough
I
about
mean,
the
that's an interesting show for luxuries, right? Because like
yeah,
Carrie Bradshaw, right, the Sarah Jessica Parker character, her famous luxury was shoes, right? And she had like that closet full of shoes, and she, like Jimmy Choos and Louboutins, and like all of the like $500 pair type of shoes, and that
you
was
can
her
buy shoes at
her
Pantene.
luxury,
She couldn't she wrote, what, 2 columns a week or something? I don't
if
know.
that,
Yeah,
if that.
I'm sorry, but for
Yeah,
basically
the reboot makes a lot more sense. I don't if you watched the reboot, which was
I haven't seen it,
very bad.
about it.
It was terrible, but it made more sense because, Big died and she got all of his money. So she had like finance money finally to like support her lifestyle. And of course she buys first thing she does is buy a house on Gramercy Park. So
But, yeah, the idea that you could write 2 articles a week and buy designer shoes and have vacations and all this free time, that is not granted, the journalism world in New York is different than the journalism world in Central
yeah,
Illinois, but I know a lot of journalism people from all over the world, and none of us had that lifestyle, certainly not from 2 articles a week.
right. Yeah. One other thing I was thinking about lectures, and I think Hannah Horvath wrote a thing about this recently about the tierification of things. Like everything now has become tiered,
Oh, yeah.
right? So you can get like, like airline, like flights or, anything almost, any experience you can always upgrade to something. And so like luxury is built in, except like half the time it's not even luxury. It's just actually getting like, the chance to choose your seat or whatever it is. But like everything now has tiers, right? There's like basic, there's premium, and there's like the top. And so like there's been this structural move to build in like an upgrade to absolutely everything.
And there again, like, if you're, say, like, at a salon and get your hair cut and they offer you, "Would you like to buy the shampoo?" or whatever, I
Yeah.
always say no, but my friend that, wa is wealthy, she said, "When they offer you extra stuff," she's like, "I always take it, don't you?" And I'm like, "No, never."
Like no. Yeah. I understand. Like I'm very susceptible to like to marketing, so things work on me very, very easily. My mom always makes fun of me because like I really like people put a display in front of me, and I'm like, oh, I'll buy it. I
Yeah,
feel it's like terrible, and so I'm like susceptible to the tierification because people say like like they'll say, do you want this upgrade on your on your plane ticket, or do you want it on your whatever it is? And I like, yeah, I do. Like that sounds great. Thank you for asking.
I'm always like, "No, get away, I'm giving you more money." But see, I did for a couple of years after the newspaper world kind of imploded, one of the things I dabbled in was working at an ad agency. But, so I actually wrote advertising and marketing copy, and I've always said that, the best thing I could do for the advertising and marketing world is to be their, they should test everything on me, and if I think something's a good idea, they should not do it, and if I thought something is like, "No one would spend money on that," you probably got a winner. I see so
Yeah.
many products and I think, "I can't believe anybody does this." DoorDash, my god, people use DoorDash? If you'd asked me, I would've said, "That's ridiculous. Someone's gotta pay extra just to have cheap food delivered to 'em. No one's gonna do." I was so wrong.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I never thought anyone would do meal kits.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh,
I think that's one of the things, I mean, maybe like the luxury again, like this is sort of is it really a luxury or is it just because people don't have free time or leisure anymore because of like work conditions? But the paying for convenience, the luxury of convenience is like such a big thing, right? People, like you said, meal kits and delivery and, like sending out your, laundry or whatever it is. But like the convenience thing is just huge. It
because
is
when
a luxury.
you're purchasing time, which you can have more or less of a lot of things, but
Yeah.
when they say we have all the same 24 hours, that's both true and false because
Right.
you can't get more than 24 hours, but you can get other people to take care of a lot
You
of
can. There's an article, this was a couple years ago, but there was an article about people who were professional, like, they waited in line professionally, like, that was, one of the things they did, so, like, like when cronuts were really big or something and you had to get there at 5 a.m. to get a cronut at the bakery, like, they would go and you could pay them to stand in line for you, or you want tickets to some type, something some play or some concert, like, they'll go stand in line for you. I don't really think there are many things that you have to stand in line for anymore, but, like, the things that you do, they would go do it for you.
I remember, during the COVID lockdown, on social media, everybody was complaining, "I can't get my hair done, I can't get my nails done, I can't have my maid in, I can't, take my dogs to the groomer, blah, blah," and all these things, and I was just like, "I've never done those things at all," and I remember writing something, that really landed on my personal Facebook at the time, and I said something like, "If you're upset because you can't," and then I kind of listed all those things. I
Yeah.
said, "Congratulate and you find this," I said, You can't do these things, you're upset, and, you think this is unbearable. Congratulations, you're living my exact life as I always live it." And a lot of people were really shocked and like, they hadn't I guess they hadn't assumed that other people just don't do all these
Just
things.
don't do all the things, yeah.
Like, "No, I don't do any of those things." I still colored my hair back then. I colored my hair myself, or actually I just stopped, but basically, yeah, I'd always even when I did color my hair, I always
Mhm.
did it for myself. I don't really do anything to my nails, but if I do, I do it to myself. I do paint my toenails, I do that myself. I clean my own house, I groom my own dogs,
Mhm.
I mow my own yard. Uh, I mean, we paid someone to put a roof on our house, but only because it's a very, very steep, difficult convoluted Victorian house roof. If it was a
Mhm.
simple roof on, like, a ranch house, we would have done it ourselves. Like, we do everything we can ourselves, we do things we should
Mhm.
be doing ourselves, we do ourselves, because that's just, that's where we are
Yeah.
socioeconomically. But a lot of people I hang out with assume you would have all that stuff done,
Yeah.
and to me, those things are luxuries, but to other people, they're normal life, and so,
Yeah.
again, it means something different to everybody different.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, that's kinda where we started, so it's probably a good place to, like, wrap up, but it is really subjective, and every the luxury conversation is just hard to there's so many ways of talking about it because it is so subjective to everyone. There are objective things that everybody wants, but it's very subjective which ones they are, right? There's a marketplace full of things that are marketed specifically to different groups you know, that are again that signal different things to different groups. And so like what the luxury is to everybody is a completely different thing. So I'll just ask you one more question. Should we have more luxury or less luxury?
I am a big fan of the luxury that involves enjoying your life in a way that does not exploit other people or put them in a disadvantage. If you are I think that's where I have a problem with some luxuries because some luxury depends upon the exploitation of others. If it's not
Yeah.
depending upon the exploitation of others, then I'm all for it, enjoy it. Um, I actually, in my opinion, I've come to realize that I actually have the greatest luxury of all that very few people have, and that is writing for a living.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
pay I pay a lot of money for this luxury
Mhm. Yeah.
because I could that's assuming I could get another job at my age, but if assuming I could get another job at my age, almost any job would pay more than writing,
Yeah.
and so I have made the it wasn't 100% a choice because I would have been happy to have gotten a nice paying marketing job or something if those were open to me at my age, and they just aren't. I really did try hard to get a job like that. So, partly one reason why I cobbled together Substack and Medium and novels and, some freelance work of other kinds, all kind of writing adjacent.
Mhm.
Partly it's not 100% something I would have chosen to do, but it is absolutely a luxury because not everybody could do it, and not everybody's willing to make the trade-offs I've made, which,
Mhm.
again, all those things I do for myself that I don't spend money on having done, that's partly because the greater luxury is to be able to write full time, and that it really is a luxury.
Yeah. That is a luxury, it's true. I mean, that the b I mean, the ability to choose whatever you want to do in terms of work, whether, first of all, being able to choose to work or not is a luxury, but also the choice of work. I think about this a lot in law school too because of student loans, right? And it's like they really direct where people work and people have to go to do things to pay off loans and there's a lot of past dependencies are created. A lot of people have to go and make more money than they would might want to go work in a firm instead of for legal aid because of loans. And so the ability to choose exactly what you want to do is a luxury for
And
sure.
I can only do it because my husband has a job with health
Yeah.
insurance.
Yeah.
If he didn't have a job with health insurance, I would not be able to do this. I just really would not be able to. You cannot 60 years old without health insurance.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't be any age without health insurance, but, because he has a job with health insurance, even though it's not a high earning job,
Yeah.
health insurance is gold. You cannot live without that. So
Yeah.
that's and also my children are grown and my house are paid off.
Yeah.
I'm old, and also I'm willing to do without very many luxuries. I
Yeah, it's interesting. There was an article, it was maybe last year in New York Magazine, and it was about people who either had inherited money from their parents or who were getting money from their parents to just, in the form of like gifts, every month or every year, whatever. And the things that the money allowed them to do, like they weren't necessarily big things, like they weren't going on, round the world trips or, buying a second apartment in Paris. They were doing things like, buying a house in New York, but they
Mhm.
were also let them do things like be an artist or be a community organizer or, do these careers that are not necessarily highly remunerated. And it's it's a strange situation, right? When you have to have basically like financial subvention and potentially inherited money to go do these things that we want people to be doing because they're things that we want, right? We want people to be big social workers. We want them to be writers. We want them to be artists,
Well
and people can't afford to do it.
well, and then there's also, I've arranged my life in a certain way. I bought a house for under $100,000 and paid it off.
Good.
I mean, over decades, not just automatically. I mean, I have really lived close to the bone for a lot of years,
Mhm.
and the reason why it comes right up to the top of my head that Doc Martens and a espresso machine are luxuries is because most of the stuff in my life is not a luxury.
Yeah.
It's, we good lord, we make everything from scratch around here, or we build it ourselves from
Yeah.
scratch wood. I mean, we built our own kitchen cabinets. I mean, we really take thriftiness to an extreme. We have rice like 3 or 4 nights a week. I
Uh-huh.
mean, though but again, that finances the luxury of me being a writer.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. One last question, which is, do you have any other luxury purchases planned to go with the after the boots?
Um, I don't. I think that we have luxuried ourselves out, and
Okay.
I am thinking, like,
Do you wear the boots while you drink your coffee?
I'm wearing my boots right now because 'cause I'm still in
Good.
the breaking them in, phase, and, I try to wear them every night when I walk the dogs, and then we come home and my husband makes a nice cup of espresso.
There you go. That sounds great. So no other luxury purchases
I've
projected.
got a 21-year-old car, and I'm trying to come up with a succession plan for that car.
Okay.
No.
Ah,
So, there'll be no spending of any sort, where it's strictly beans and rice from here on out until I can figure out how to replace that car 'cause it's gonna die any day now. We can not
okay.
today, but that's gonna be the luxury is,
Do you like cars, or are cars like
I don't give a shit about cars.
no?
As long as
Okay.
something that can get me to my appointments when I need to go.
Okay. Well, then, yeah, that makes a difference, right? You're not like you don't have your eye on something
My husband would like
on a
to
luxury car.
Cooper, which is, to me, that's a little bit of a splurge. We bought a used Mini Cooper a long time ago. Like I said, this car is 21 years old because, um, when my son was a teenager, he fell asleep driving one afternoon and, smashed up and flipped my Neon, which I'd planned to the end of time. So we took the insurance money and we bought this Mini Cooper, and that was at the time, I still had a full-time job, so I thought that
Mhm.
was a fairly reasonable splurge. My husband was really happy to drive it, but now I'm like, "Let's buy a 10-year-old Honda Civic." Our other car actually is an old Honda Civic that's all this
Uh-huh.
old. So, I would be completely fine with driving anything reliable of any age as long as I think that it won't cost us too much in upkeep.
Yeah.
Husband would really like to get a Mini Cooper that's just old enough that we might be able to afford it, and, he's not a guy who's into luxuries, but he really does love that Mini Cooper, but man, it has
I
fallen.
mean, they have engines made by BMW, so, like,
I consider that a little bit of a
there you go. It's a little bit of a luxury. It's like yeah.
luxury that's worth about $1,000, but it's a luxury.
Yep, there you go. I love it. All right. Well, I think like I said, we were back to where we started with the luxury meaning something different to everybody, and it makes it fascinating because it's always interesting to hear what people think about luxuries and like what's a luxury to them and what people prioritize, right? It's a good way to understand what people prioritize and what's meaningful to them, right? I think it goes back to what somebody said in the chat too. It's an abundance of what you love or what you value. And so luxuries, um, in the positive sense, right, that we've sort of talked about, luxuries are a way of like understanding meaningful items to people that are consumer goods, but also not.
My, um these dishes I consider a luxury, and I bought them when I first started making a little bit of money from writing. They're Fiesta ware. I had
Huh?
Fiesta ware since I first learned about Fiesta ware in college, and when I was finally able to buy a set of Fiesta ware, I was absolutely freaking thrilled. It was like fine china would have been to my grandmother.
Yeah.
And it's also very practical. It is more expensive than I could have bought cheaper dishes, but
Hmm.
these have held up, and if I end up breaking some, you can always buy more and fit them
Yeah.
in. 'Cause I bought mix and match, so I'll never have to, like, throw them out and get a whole new set. So
Yeah.
this is my idea of,
Practical luxury. Is that a term? Is that a thing? Practical luxury?
well, luxury and also, again, to me I write a lot about, like, living on little money, but to me, that idea isn't just to live on the absolute less amount of money you could. I mean, theoretically, you could live under a bridge or something, but to live in a way that's
I mean, you actually can't sadly, right? Like, sadly, the law will come and find you, and police will take you out, and people are not allowed to be unhoused anymore, but that's another topic too.
that's another whole topic that I could
Yeah,
say so much about. Oh god, I know so much about that from my newspaper times, but
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I guess okay, so let's end with let's try to come up with a good, solid definition of luxury, and to me, I think it is being able to live in a sustainable, reasonably comfortable, non-wasteful way that doesn't take advantage of other people or the environment.
That's a yeah, that's a very positive framing. Yeah, if I had a positive framing, it would be, it's interesting, we didn't talk about this, we can talk about this some other time. Luxury is also, right, that which is unnecessary, which can encompass a lot of really important things, right? Like, that could encompass, like, art, it can encompass all kinds of things that people might not, right, at least in sort of like a capitalized market system, might not consider to be necessaries, but the luxury being that which is unnecessary, and
Don't agree,
therefore it can be very spectacular, right?
but we disagree on what's necessary too.
Right, that's the problem, right? Like, people don't agree. I mean, I guess people probably do agree on what's necessary in the sense that, like, you need a place to live, you need things to eat. It's just what those look like, right, to everybody.
Like, we all agree a big, fancy, expensive diamond ring is a luxury. Is my plain gold band a luxury?
Yeah,
Uh, you know, we I don't think it is, but to someone who doesn't have a gold band, it is. I mean, gold used to be considered the ultimate luxury. A plain gold band would be considered really aspirational, but it is not exactly just like now it's like the minimal thing you could even wear to show that you're married. It's I don't even have a diamond, I just have the wedding band. To me, that's, minimal, but some people might say, "That's wasteful, you didn't need that gold ring, you can be married without a gold ring,"
right,
and they're right.
right. And I mean, I think that's why luxury is so attractive, because if we only lived on that which was total absolutely necessary, life would be really unattractive,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for talking.
Yes,
And
and thank you for everybody who joined.
yes, thank you, everyone. And if people have other suggestions that they ever want topics for us to talk about, or, any thoughts about luxuries continue, just let us know,
I would
and we'll be
about
back.
I would love to get about 1,000,000 notes from people giving their definition of what they
Yeah, that would be very fun.
when we post this live, once Substack has done whatever it does to it, uh, if you're in here, if you get time, yeah, post a little note and say, "This is how I would define luxury," and maybe also what your favorite luxury is.
Yeah, I'm
Be
going to try to think of the last luxury purchase I made, and I'll post something. And then, yeah, it'd be fascinating to see what other people said too. So,
I know what mine is, it's my boots.
yeah, I'm going to think of mine. So, I'm going to start thinking.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Everybody have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.